Hey, thank you for joining Carini Arts. Please check out CariniArts.com for my shop, my blog, my podcast. I am a full-time independent artist. You make this impossible dream possible. And I am not the Italian artist that managed to sell an $18,000 sculpture made out of air and spirit. But kudos to my Italian brother for doing so. I mean, my girlfriend makes farts that are composed of air and spirit, but she's not selling them for $18,000. If she did, I'd probably encourage them a little bit more. But hey, to each their own. I'm not knocking on the artist that managed it. I want to actually talk about it and how they're able to do that. I also want to dive into a few other things, including that infamous $120,000 banana that we all know about, and also NFT art, because it seems to be the craze these days. So let's back up and let's do this chronologically. So let's talk about the $120,000 banana, or perhaps we need to back up even further than that, because I remember myself, there was a time where I am an abstract artist, where I did not appreciate abstract art. I didn't understand it. I didn't appreciate it. And I couldn't contextualize it. And then once I took art history courses and minored in art history, took arts of the world, everything from the cave paintings of Lascaux up through modernism, through spaces of wonder and contemporary art, and having contemporary artists visit my class and talk about their experiences, I started to understand the ideas behind it, and that it was very much the idea behind it. These were the people that were at the forefront of what they did. They were the avant-garde, meaning at the front. And artists like Pollock, people say, oh, well, he's just spilling paint, but he was an action painter. It was about process, and they were the first to do so. So when they were the first to do so, when they truly were the avant-garde and at the front, there was a special type of value for that. So when I go see Pollock's paintings in a museum or Barnett Newman, I appreciate their work. I do. I appreciate the value, but there was a time in my life where I didn't understand it, or I'd say, oh, I can't believe that sold for that much. And it would make me upset. But I realized that me being upset came from this feeling of feeling insecure and questioning the value of my work, saying, hey, why can't I do that? And you hear the arguments all the time, and we'll talk about this another time too, is somebody saying, oh, well, my kid can do that. Well, your kid didn't do it. And your kid didn't necessarily have the thoughts that went into it. But now we're talking about the thoughts behind something, and not just the painting itself, the tangible, visible portion and components of the work that is being purchased. So it does enter into a new realm. And ultimately, what it comes down to is that it is a world of gatekeepers, and it is an elite, limited number of people that are allowed into that club, into that group. I'm not even a part of that group or part of that club, even though I do well with my work. I'm very proud of what I've done with my work and the price points I've had for my work. But even I have questioned my work at times and said, oh, is it really worth that much money? And I think that I diminish my value at times, because it's true. Art is valued to the level at which people are willing to pay for it. There's a lot of truth to that. So if somebody's willing to pay for it, if somebody's willing to pay $120,000 for banana, then I guess it's worth $120,000 to that person. Now, is there something else going on there? I hear a lot of people comment money laundering, and I'm not going to comment on that, because I don't know. I don't even know who the artist technically is, but a lot of times once an artist has that name and they're accepted as part of that club, and they've got the stamp of approval from the powers that be, and who are the powers that be and who determines the powers that be? Because it's not always a matter of objectivity. Because I think that that is one of the things that really becomes the dilemma, is you look at paintings from modernism that are sold for millions and millions of dollars, and then you stack it up to another artist, whether an artist of the past or a contemporary artist, and you say, well, objectively speaking, this is a better piece of work, and nobody's even willing to buy this for $100, but somebody's willing to spend $100 million on this. And what is the rhyme or the reason to it? And again, art is one of those things that is mystical in nature, and there's not always going to be an explanation or a rationale, or perhaps there is, and we just don't get the full story. We just see a certain angle of it, and oftentimes that's going to be the case. So the $120,000 banana, you want to get mad about it, and I know a lot of people do, and I wanted to at first, but I thought, hey, well, I'm not going to make $120,000 off the banana that I ate this morning. In fact, I ate two, so I'm not getting $250,000 for that. It would have paid for education for another 4 years of either undergrad or maybe grad school, something like that. But somebody was supposedly willing to pay for that. But then you have to ask the question, was the art really the dialogue and getting people to talk about it? Because art can be many different things, and sometimes it can be performative in nature. And so maybe it's not the thing itself, but it's what comes from it. So maybe it was creating the dialogue and having people talk about it. Hey, I'm on here talking about this $18,000 sculpture of air and spirit today. And same thing with the banana. It really got a craze going. So it generated a level of attention and interest, and that has some value to it. So the Italian artist, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, even though I am Italian myself. I'm not going to butcher any names here, but $18,000 for an invisible sculpture composed of air and spirit. Now, I've got a lot of spirit that goes into my work, a fair amount of air. I actually, because my process is called acrylic alchemy, I have worked things into my projects, including ashes, alcohol at times, different household chemicals. I have a painting called The Secrets That Lie in Truth, where I had people put secrets on the painting, and then I painted over them to protect them. So I do have a number of pieces that have these contextual elements to them. So it's an interesting thing, but it's definitely going to raise a lot of interest and controversy, because understandably, there's going to be artists out there that are working their butts off, and they're saying, how is this person selling this for that much? We don't know how much time and effort this person has put into their career or what they've done to elevate themselves to a certain status level. Perhaps it was just kissing butt or something of that nature, knowing the right people and having the right inroads, because oftentimes, yeah, that's the case. Because you know what? If we go back in art history and we look at artists, yeah, I'm not diminishing any of the artists out there. I think that all art has a value to it. So if we do go back, though, there are a lot of artists, particularly minorities and women. So I want to speak up in this case and give them their credit and their due diligence right now in speaking up for them. There are a lot of artists that weren't acknowledged, that were as technically proficient or doing the work, but they just weren't in the right place at the right time or getting the stamp of approval from certain people. So I want to say for artists out there right now that your work is not diminished in any way because it may not be being recognized or selling for the price point of another artist. So don't ever base the value of your work off of that. Now, I do want to briefly jump into the idea of NFTs, because that's the hot thing right now, non-fungible token-based art. And it's the hot commodity right now. I see it all over the place. I even see athletes and actors getting into it, UFC athletes selling NFTs that they are on with images of themselves. Now, what is an NFT? Now, I am not an expert at this, but my primitive understanding is that it's essentially equates to like a JPEG, but it has to have the what's called blockchain attached to it, and has to be purchased through cryptocurrency, which I am not connected to. Now, when this first hit, I thought, oh, maybe I need to actually try to be a part of this, because when I am judgmental of these things like the banana, like the sculpture of air and spirit, I have to ask myself, well, why didn't you do it? It's easy to say, well, my kid could do that, or anybody could do that. Well, then why didn't you? Why didn't you jump on board? Why didn't you make something happen? So maybe it's a matter of pushing to the point that you can convince somebody. So maybe you could be the person someday that is selling something at a insane price point. I shouldn't say insane, but by insane, I just mean a very high price point of something that maybe nobody would have ever thought somebody would have paid that for. But again, I have to ask that question about my own art. There have been times that I've sold things and I've said, oh, like, should I feel bad about selling it for that much? Is it really worth that? So I start to question my own value. But then when I see that people are purchasing things like bananas for $120,000 and sculptures made of air and light, I realize certain people out there have the resources to just spend endless amounts of money on anything. So never feel bad for your price point. So right now I want to say, if you're an artist out there questioning the price points of your work, don't. You decide the value of your work. And I think that's an important thing for you to remember, is that you set the value of your work. And if these people have tried to sell these things for much lower price points, if you tried to sell the banana for $100, would it mean anything at that point? Maybe it was because of the price point. So I'm reading Beach Girl's comment. So I am not familiar with that per se. Again, I'm not an expert on this. I've just kind of briefly glossed over it over the course of the past couple months, because at one point I thought I was going to get into it, because I thought, because essentially if you purchase NFT art, what you're getting is a JPEG, to my knowledge. And so I thought, well, why don't I just take a few of my paintings that I have, and why don't we digitally repaint and remaster them, and we can call them digitally repainted paintings. So in that case, it would actually come from a tangible thing, but they would still be getting the NFT, the non-fungible item, in this case, the JPEG, the digital artwork. But that's when I realized that it had to have the blockchain attached to it, which is a process you have to go through. And there's only a limited number of sources you can go to or go through to get that done. And then you have to have a certain amount of cryptocurrency to even make that happen. So again, artists that don't have a lot of resources or a lot of money are not necessarily going to be able to do things like that. So again, it comes down to people being able to be part of, at least to my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to be part of an elite club where you have these certain resources and these connections. And so it's part of being within that high class society and being part of that elite group with the stamps of approval from the powers that be. And the truth is that the powers that be, and I'm not knocking on the powers that be, but they're not necessarily more in tune or more aware or more acute or better suited to judge art than others. So to each their own, and your work is by no means diminished for that, but some of us will just not be part of that club. And I am okay with not being part of that club and doing things my own way. But I do find this NFT thing very interesting. I'm curious if it's going to last. But I like making tangible art. I like making things that people can get sucked into. Now, I do like, in some cases, the idea of maybe finding digital formats for my work, making my work digitally accessible. But I want my work to be accessible to everybody. So I don't want people to have cryptocurrency to be able to have a JPEG of my work. As long as somebody's not going to take that JPEG and start producing it and selling it and profiting off of it in other ways, I'm okay with doing that. I'm okay with working with musicians and working with people that do videos and providing source files and things of that nature in order to make that happen. But this NFT thing, I keep reading about it more and more each day. So it has not passed yet. It's been here for a hot minute. And I'm curious if it's going to be here a lot longer, or what's going to become of that, because the art world has really changed in some ways a lot over the past couple decades. And in some ways it has stayed the same. So curious to see where things are going to go. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on NFT art. I know the large criticism from the majority seems to be that it's a sham of sorts, and it's a way to launder money. Same thing with the idea of the Italian sculpture and the banana. And I have no doubt that there are people that do nefarious things that have resources, just as there are people that don't have resources that do nefarious things. So I'm not going to pass judgment, and I'm not going to criticize the artists that did these things, because, hey, they managed to pull these things off. So that is a great feat and an art in and of itself, the art of persuasion, the art to be able to convince somebody to do these things. So if you can convince somebody to do these things, hey, power to you. And I think that for me to judge another artist, and a big part of what I talk about is not judging other artists, because I don't know everything behind their work. Just as when people first come to me, and even if they've followed me for a long time, they don't necessarily know the totality of my story, my full experience. They have a limited perspective from the lens from which they view me. And so I have to recognize that with my observation and judgment of other artists as well. And so I prefer to take a perspective of, I appreciate each artist for what they contribute and what they bring to the table. Yeah, I think that, as Beach Girl said, she's not into it. A lot of people are with you there. A lot of people are more into the tangible stuff, and even work that has high price points, having it have some degree of validation. But having said that, I've had people that have criticized me for the price points of my work, and they've said, oh, it's abstract work. It's not worth that. It's just lines. It's just scribbles. It's just shit. But I do understand the idea where he talks about air and spirit to an extent, because my work is about kinetic energy and flow and release, being a neurodivergent artist with Tourette's. So there is some of that element that goes into the work. And I do think it has a special type of value. But to say that not everybody is going to understand that, and some people do like the tangible thing. And it's the same reason that a lot of people like representational work and photorealistic work more than they like abstract work. And as I mentioned earlier, it wasn't until I studied the arts of the world, the arts of Asia, Asian scroll painting, Middle Eastern patterns and tessellations, modernism, spaces of wonder, walking labyrinths and studying the stars and things in that, finding the art in the biology and in nature, that I learned to really appreciate and understand things from a different perspective. So I know over time, my perspective has definitely changed. But yeah, I'm not super interested in the NFTs. I thought that maybe it was something I needed to jump on just to be in the market and be in the conversation. But as I mentioned in recent weeks, I've reached a point of accepting who I am and really diving into that and being okay with being different and doing things my own way, even if it is the road less traveled. But please feel free to join me, to share my videos, and to join me for more on Facebook and Instagram. You can go to CariniArts.com, find all my social media platforms. And I do want to know the topics and the subjects that you want to talk about on these future segments. So I'm here for you. I want to do more on YouTube. I do need help growing my following. Once I reach 1,000 followers, I can start doing them on my mobile, which means the quality might be a little bit better. And once I do that and hit that point, I'm going to start doing some demos where I'm going to do videos showing how to gesso, how to prime, how to do different painting techniques. But I don't want to do it on my crappy desktop computer. So I'm not asking for a lot. I'm not asking for $18,000 for a sculpture made of air and spirit. And I mean, hey, I'll sell you a banana for, I'll give you a deal. I'll sell one for $60,000. But your support means everything to me. So have a good day. CariniArts.com. Let me know what you want to talk about. Feel free to comment, and you can always share my videos. I encourage you to do so because I like to talk about the stuff that matters. Have a good day.